Inside, I'm lost.
My name is Caleb. I'm 24, and most nights I'm the one you call when the world suddenly tilts and panic sets in. People expect me to move without hesitation, to step straight into the fire or the flood, steady as if fear has never lived inside me. And for a long time, I believed that about myself, that I could always meet the chaos head on and walk out unchanged. But tonight unraveled that illusion. It had been one of those deceptively quiet evenings at the rescue outpost tucked against the edge of the national forest. The kind of night when silence feels heavy, when even the hum of the old fluorescent light above my desk seemed too loud. I was halfway through checking batteries and tightening straps on our gear when my phone shattered the calm, ringing sharp and urgent, like an alarm that knew more than I did. I answered on instinct, my voice clipped and controlled. Caleb speaking? On the other end was Daniel, a park ranger I knew well, though he never called unless something was truly wrong. His tone was tight, breathless. "We've got a problem. A woman's gone missing. Her name is Laura Hayes. She went hiking this afternoon and never came back. Phone's dead. Car's still sitting out by the trail at Pine Hollow." My stomach dropped. Laura Hayes. The name struck me hard, dredging up a face I knew far too well. "Laura?" I repeated, pulse kicking in my throat. Daniel hesitated. "Yeah, you know her?" I swallowed, my mind already racing. Yeah, I do. More than I should admit out loud. She wasn't just some stranger who wandered too far into the woods. She was the woman I'd noticed in quiet moments, the mother of my closest friend, a presence I could never ignore no matter how much I tried. Before Daniel could say more, I was already moving, pulling gear together with muscle memory. Flashlight, compass, med kit, radio, spare blankets. Each item landing in my pack with the precision of a drill I'd done 100 times before. But my hands trembled in ways they never had, because this wasn't just another call. This was Laura. And something deep inside me knew that whatever I found tonight, nothing would ever be the same again. I slammed the back of my old truck shut, the pack thudding against metal as I climbed behind the wheel. The engine coughed awake, headlights slicing weak tunnels through the heavy dark. Pine Hollow wasn't far, but every mile felt like a countdown, my chest tight with an urgency I couldn't shake. The forest rose ahead like a black wall, ancient and unmoving, and I couldn't ignore the thought of her alone out there, swallowed by shadows. Laura was always the kind of woman who seemed untouchable in town. Graceful, careful, never reckless. What could have driven her into the wilderness by herself at dusk? That question gnawed at me, turning each bend of the road into a silent accusation. The tires crunched gravel as I pulled up to the trailhead. Her car was there, angled oddly, as though she'd parked without thinking twice. Seeing it made the back of my neck prickle. I grabbed my pack and stepped out, the night air sharp against my skin, scented with damp earth and pine needles crushed underfoot. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was thick, watching, waiting. I switched on my flashlight, the beam carving a narrow path forward, and started down the trail. Each stride pressed urgency into my bones, boots breaking twigs that cracked like tiny alarms beneath me. "Laura!" I called, my voice carrying into the trees, but the sound was swallowed whole, as if the forest had no intention of giving anything back. A few minutes in, the light caught on something pale half buried in the dirt. I crouched, heart slamming, and lifted it from the ground. A scarf hers. I'd seen her wear it before, soft fabric always resting against her throat. Now it was streaked with soil, lying abandoned. My fingers closed around it, and for a heartbeat it felt almost warm, as though she'd been there moments earlier. That chill up my spine hardened my resolve. She wasn't just missing, she was close. And if she was close, she needed me. I pushed forward, deeper into the narrowing trail, every shadow twisting into shapes that forced me to quicken my pace. Branches clawed at my arms, the silence heavy enough to make my pulse sound deafening in my ears. The deeper I went, the more I realized this wasn't simply a rescue mission. Something in me knew tonight would draw a line I could never step back over. The path eventually bled into tangled undergrowth, branches pressing in until the trail itself seemed to vanish. I stopped, sweeping the flashlight across the dense wall of trees, my breath caught somewhere between frustration and fear. Then, faintly, I noticed it. Twigs bent, earth disturbed, a subtle track leading off to the side. I pushed through, branches scratching across my arms and jacket, until suddenly the forest opened into a small clearing. That's when I saw her. Laura was curled beneath a massive oak, her frame small against its towering roots. Her clothes were smeared with dirt, her knees pulled tight to her chest, and her face streaked with dried tears. The woman I had always known for her poise, her careful distance, now looked fragile in a way that twisted something deep inside me. "Laura!" The word tore out of me before I could stop it. Her head snapped up, startled, eyes wide and disoriented. Then she whispered my name, shaky and soft, barely there. "Caleb?" I dropped to my knees beside her, scanning quickly for injuries. A scrape marred her knee, nothing life-threatening, but the tremor running through her body told me enough. She was exhausted, chilled, and scared. I slid the emergency blanket from my pack, wrapping it around her shoulders, my fingers brushing against her cold skin. "You're safe now," I murmured, steadying my voice, even as relief roared in my chest like thunder. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "I thought I knew the trail," she confessed, voice breaking. "But the light faded so quickly I didn't know where I was anymore." Her words were jagged, edged with shame, as though she believed getting lost made her weak. I shook my head gently. "It happens to everyone. You're not alone anymore." She looked up at me then, truly looked, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and a quiet disbelief that someone had come. In that glow of the flashlight, with the forest pressing close, it felt like something unspoken shifted between us. She leaned the slightest bit toward me, not enough to break the barrier of caution, but enough that I felt the weight of her trust settle against my side. And in that instant, kneeling in the cold earth beneath the oak, I knew this night wasn't just about leading her back to safety. It was about crossing into a place neither of us had dared acknowledge before. Night sank deeper around us, the cold settling in with a grip that made my breath fog the beam of my flashlight. I knew immediately we wouldn't be making it back to the trailhead in this condition. Laura's body shook beneath the thin blanket, her strength too drained, the forest too treacherous to risk. "We'll stay here until daylight," I told her gently, not as a suggestion, but as a decision made. She nodded faintly, though I caught the flicker of embarrassment in her eyes, as if being a burden weighed heavier on her than the darkness itself. I busied myself with what I knew best, gathering branches, clearing a space, striking the fire. Sparks caught and grew into flame, casting a warm, unsteady glow across the clearing. Laura sat tucked against the oak's roots, the blanket wrapped close, watching me with an intensity that made me feel every movement mattered. When the fire finally breathed steady, I sat beside her. For a while, we let the flames do the talking. The crackle, the hiss, the flicker. It was easier than words. But silence has its own weight, and eventually it pressed something loose inside her. "I wasn't just walking," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the fire. Her voice was so soft I almost thought the forest itself was speaking. "I was trying to outrun myself." I turned, waiting, not pushing. She drew a breath, shoulders rising then falling as if carrying a stone. "My marriage ended a year ago. I thought I was handling it. I put on the mask, told everyone I was fine, strong, moving on. But it's a lie. I've never felt more lost. I come out here thinking the woods will give me answers, but all I find is more silence." The firelight caught the wet shimmer in her eyes before she blinked it away. I let her words settle, then leaned closer, my tone steady. "You don't have to pretend with me." "Not tonight." Her chin trembled, and she gave the faintest shake of her head, as though resisting the permission I'd just offered. Then, slowly, the resistance crumbled. Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet but relentless, and in that moment, the distance she'd kept from the world collapsed. Instinct pulled me closer. I draped my jacket over her shoulders, my arm finding its place around her as naturally as if it had been meant to all along. She stiffened only for a heartbeat, then let her head fall against my chest, her breath uneven against me. The fire painted her face in golden shadow, and I realized I was holding more than a woman caught in the woods. I was holding someone who had carried too much pain alone, and for the first time in a long while, she let someone else carry it with her. At some point in the long hours, her breathing softened, falling into rhythm against me. The forest never truly slept. The wind shifted through the branches, an owl called in the distance, but she did. Curled close, her face eased of the tension that had carved it earlier. I stayed awake listening to the night guard itself, keeping the fire alive whenever it threatened to fade. Holding her there, wrapped in warmth that was more human than flame, I realized sleep would not come for me. My duty was to keep her safe, but my heart was busy reckoning with something far heavier. When the first light crept through the canopy, it arrived gently, painting the clearing in pale silver. The fire was embers now, glowing faint like the last note of a song. Laura stirred, her head shifting slightly before her eyes blinked open, confusion flashing across her face until memory caught up. She drew back quickly, murmuring, "I'm sorry," as if falling asleep beside me had been a trespass. I shook my head, offering a small smile. "You needed the rest." She gave a shy nod, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. The vulnerability from last night still lingered, but the morning added a softer layer embarrassment threaded with gratitude. We packed in silence, stamping out what remained of the fire, gathering our things. The trail looked different by daylight, less like a labyrinth, more like a path leading us forward. As we walked side by side, the forest waking around us with birdsong and sunlight on damp leaves, the air between us carried an unspoken shift. It wasn't just relief or survival anymore, it was the awareness that what had been born in the darkness didn't disappear with the dawn. She glanced at me once, catching my eye before looking away too quickly, a faint smile tugging her lips as if to acknowledge the memory of the night without saying it aloud. And though we both kept our steps steady toward the rescue station, I knew the forest hadn't merely tested us. It had braided our lives together in ways neither of us could untangle now. Days passed, but the forest never left me. I carried it in flashes, the glow of the fire on her face, the weight of her leaning into me, the way silence had turned into confession. I told myself it was just circumstance, a fragile moment born of fear. But I knew better. And when her message arrived, a simple line asking if we could meet, I didn't hesitate. The cafe she chose sat on the edge of town, far from familiar eyes. When I walked in, she was already waiting at a corner table by the window, sunlight pouring over her in a way that almost felt smimed. Laura smiled when she saw me, but there was tension in it, a fragile thread pulling both ways. I slid into the chair across from her. For a while, words felt clumsy, so we let the clinking cups and low murmur of the room fill the gap. Then she spoke, stirring her coffee with a hand that wasn't steady. "I haven't stopped thinking about that night," she admitted, her voice as cautious as if the walls themselves might judge her. I nodded, my own chest tight. "Neither have I." Her gaze flicked up, then dropped again. "But this, us, it isn't simple, Caleb. You're so young. People will talk. They always do." There it was, the weight we both knew would come, spoken aloud like a verdict. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. She stiffened at first, then stilled, letting the contact anchor her. "Let them talk," I said softly. "What matters is how we feel. You've spent too long carrying everyone else's expectations. You don't have to carry this one." She looked at me then, really looked, searching for any sign of hesitation. Instead, she found certainty. "You're braver than me," she whispered. "I've lived long enough to know what judgment feels like, and it's hard to ignore." I shook my head. "You're the one who walked into the woods alone, chasing something you couldn't even name." "That's not weakness, Laura, that's courage. I just happened to find you when you were ready to be found." Her lips parted as though she wanted to argue, but then closed again, replaced by a tremor of a smile that softened her whole face. We spoke more after that, about fears and regrets, about the strange way one night had shifted the ground beneath us. The more she opened, the clearer it became. This wasn't just survival binding us. It was something deeper, something neither of us had expected but both of us needed. When we finally stood to leave, walking side by side along the quiet street, her arm brushed mine. She didn't move away. For the first time, I felt that maybe, just maybe, the world outside the forest could make space for us too. The cafe left us quieter but lighter, as though something long held had finally been named. A few days later, she asked if I'd meet her by the lake at the edge of town. I arrived as the sun was beginning its descent, spilling gold across the water. Laura was already there, standing near the railing, her reflection rippling in the surface below. She turned when I approached, her smile small but genuine, carrying both nervousness and relief. We walked together along the path, our steps unhurried. The lake mirrored the sky, blushing pink and amber, and the hush of evening wrapped around us. "I've thought a lot about what comes next," she said softly, eyes on the horizon. "And?" I asked, though my heart thudded with more hope than caution. She hesitated, brushing her fingers against mine before letting them linger. "I don't have answers, Caleb. Not about tomorrow, not about how people will see us. But last night in the forest taught me something. I don't want to live half alive anymore. If this is real, if what we feel matters, then maybe that's enough." Her words cut through me with a tenderness sharper than any blade. I took her hand fully then, folding it into mine, steady and certain. "It is real. And it is enough." She met my gaze, her eyes shimmering in the fading light, and for a long moment we simply stood there, hand in hand, while the world tilted quietly toward night. There was no grand declaration, no promise of forever, only the simple courage of choosing this moment, of refusing to let fear dictate what we could become. The future was uncertain, but in that uncertainty was freedom. Walking together along the lakeside, I felt a truth settle deep within me. Love doesn't always arrive in the ways we're taught to expect. Sometimes it finds us when we're lost, cold, tired, aching, and it asks for nothing but honesty. Laura had given me hers, and I'd offered mine in return. That was where everything began. And maybe that's what courage really is. Not the rescues, not the fire or the storms, but the quiet act of letting someone see you, flaws and all, and daring to believe they'll stay. Maybe as you listened, something inside you stirred. Because we all know what it feels like to be adrift, to hide behind a mask, or to wonder if anyone will truly see us. Caleb and Laura's story is just one reminder that sometimes the most powerful rescue isn't pulling someone out of the dark woods, but sitting beside them in silence and refusing to let them feel alone. I wonder, have you ever found connection in an unexpected place when you least expected it? A moment where someone's presence cut through your fear, your loneliness, and made you feel alive again? If so, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Your story might be the spark someone else needs to keep going. And if this tale touched you, even just a little, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. Every gesture of support helps us keep telling these stories. The ones about love found in unlikely places, about courage hidden in quiet hearts, about the ways we discover each other when we're most lost. Thank you for spending your time here, for letting this story breathe alongside your own. Until next time, may you find the courage to trust, to open, and to let someone walk with you through the unknown.